Clare and Andy in the Morning, Episode 3, Fighting Round the World.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much. Bright and early. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Oh, well, okay, yeah. But there's no need for us to discuss that. It's just an exciting fashion choice. I have merged my cup up a bit. Not that you can see it because of where the sun is, but whatever. And I think. Oh yes, we're gonna have to do something about the jingle. I think.
We're going to have to do something about it.
Yeah. So is it
because today's different?
Because today's different. Is it going to be Clare and Andy and Tom in the morning, or are we going to go with Clare and Andy in the morning with Tom?
With Tom. Okay, I like with Tom.
Okay, one, two, three. Clare and Andy in the
morning.
Clare and Andy in the morning
with Tom.
Yeah, we're getting so much better at this. Yes, so today we're being joined by Tom Hancocks from the skirmish team, and we're going to talk a little bit about what he does and about how battles go from the players.
Yeah, about how battles are planned and how they're written and how we present them to the players.
What their role is and about the military council. So Tom should be joining us any minute now. Better. Hello, Tom.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Clare and Andy in the morning.
Actually recorded in the morning.
For having me.
Shh, don't break the illusion.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's all right.
So the last couple of these we've talked about Winds of War and Winds of Fortune and how those build up to events and what happens at events. And then we thought it would be a good idea to talk to you about battles and battle preparation in more detail, because that's your job at PD.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's go for it.
So what do you actually do? What's your job title?
My job title? I believe I'm battle plot writer or head of battle plot writing. Essentially, I am a team of one person in that regard. So I guess, I could be El Presidente of battle plot writing, perhaps. But no, so I'm part of PD's battle team. And I guess my main role is really actually doing the plot writing for the battles, and then essentially a lot of the logistics, coordinating with our skirmish team, with the ref team, and everybody else to make those battles actually happen when we're at the event.
So where we left off in the last podcast, we just talked about how at the end of events we put the enemy battle orders in before we know about what the players have done. And then Graham gets to crunch those in a giant spreadsheet. And I assume soon after that you get involved.
Yeah, so I guess, and I suppose it's constantly changing. Obviously, I've been doing, writing for Empire now since before we were actually on the current site in terms of the battles. But yeah, no, I think sort of even in the past year, we've advanced that more. So I'm sort of involved in some of the discussions, I guess, Andy and Matt will have, right at the end of the event. So, going away from the event, we start to have an idea of what the theatres of war might be for the next kind of period of the campaign, and then obviously where our focus might be in terms of the battles. But I guess, Andy, I start to come in once you're at the point of having those numbers from Graham.
Normally we bring you in at the point where we are writing Winds of War, because that, particularly in the last few events or so, is when we start thinking about what's going to actually happen on the field at the next event as a consequence of the Winds of War, and we want to work those into the narrative we're putting together. So we get involved. So we get you involved about that point. So we can we usually have a meeting in which we lay out these are the places where interesting stuff is happening, where we think an uptime battle could have an impact or could be interesting or could have a key element, and that's when we get you and, to a much smaller degree, Connell involved. I just wanted to say a few things about Connell.
Definitely. And
so you all have a meeting, you talk about things that could come up, and then Tom goes away and writes them, or you all write them together?
So I guess it's, so I think we start off with the big discussion about, from Graham's perspective, what has happened, which armies have come out on top. And then I think it's with Matt and with Andy starting to actually sort of talk about, maybe what those numbers mean in kind of reality, or, what is the actual feel for that campaign. And then I guess out of that very quickly, we start to get quite exciting ideas about, what those campaign elements might mean in terms of a battle that we want to be running. And also, the skirmishes that we might want to run alongside the campaign that has happened in a particular territory or kind of region of the Empire.
Yeah, because our military plot, our military story is not just the battles. How many skirmishes do you run an event, Tom?
I think we are probably pushing nearly 16 to 20 military skirmishes, I think, which are essentially run alongside the battles in many ways. They're at a lower level, very much tied to, I think, either individual nations or the different archetypes at Empire that, maybe the Jotun have attacked a particular shrine or kind of temple to the way. So obviously there's an in there for priests across the game to get involved. In a skirmish, it doesn't actually sort of reach up to the high level of the campaign where the military council itself needs to be making those decisions.
But we've shaken that up from time to time. I mean, we've done things like linked skirmishes that over the course of success, failure across 5 individual sort of encounters, for example, will have an impact on the campaign, albeit a smaller one than we'll normally see at battle level.
Yes.
Can we just quickly clear up terminology?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
So when we say skirmish, what do we mean?
So a skirmish for me is not a battle. It is essentially a military engagement. So these are primarily essentially encounters where players go through the Sentinel Gate and there will be military action there. So that is obviously the fighters and the mages of Empire actually engaging in combat with the enemy to a greater or lesser degree. So they are separate from what I guess we term either plot encounters or plot skirmishes. Which
we use a broad term backstage, which is quest. Anything that involves leaving Anvil for any reason is a quest, arguably including things like eternal audiences. So what Tom does with the fights are very much the skirmish quests, but they sit alongside diplomatic meetings and also the tent encounters, which are usually non-combat orientated and take place in our encounter tents rather than on our I don't know what we call it, skirmish field.
Yeah, in the skirmish areas. And I think obviously one of the big distinctions, obviously separating particularly essentially the encounter tents from most of the skirmishes that we run in the woods and on the field, is the involvement of the skirmish team essentially as those NPCs, and they'll be portraying, barbarian orcs, the Valorn, husks, and other sort of creatures of the world. Whereas it tends to be, and I guess there is no hard and fast rule, it tends to be our NPC team will be involved in those other encounters. But of course, there is massive overlap. So sometimes we do have our plot writers will have combat encounters, which be a very particular type of maybe barbarian orc or more unique monsters with the Valorn or sort of heralds of the different realms, where there is actual combat, but at a smaller level again to those military engagements.
Okay, so we've written Winds of the War, we've written our battle opportunities and our skirmish opportunities. So what are we looking at? Because we offer the players a selection, don't we, from which they get to choose 2 effectively. So how many do you look to offer them?
So I guess with the battles, we are offering, I think, consistently now between 3 and 5 opportunities for the military council to essentially, deliberate over and choose which 2 they want. And I guess within that, we've got quite a bit of flexibility for how we theme, I guess, sort of different battles. And it also hinges off the choices that we're able to offer. So if we want to offer, I guess, opportunities where, I guess, past event, we had a very large fortification that we put up on the battlefield. We want to try and make sure that, I guess, we're not putting that up for no reason, that we're going to make use of it. So, we may find that there are 2 of the battle opportunities would make use of that element essentially on the battlefield. It's getting those 3 to 5 options, and that will really depend on what's happened in the campaign. So I guess, Andy, there's instances where, maybe not much actually combat has happened during the campaign, and we've reduced those battle opportunities down accordingly, haven't we?
It's very much, it's an art, basically. There's no hard and fast rules to it. So sometimes we'll look at an arena and there'll be nothing going on and we'll have no inspiration for a battle opportunity. Or sometimes we'll look at an arena and there'll be nothing going on and we'll think, actually, what we could do is do this as a battle opportunity, and that would cause something to happen, or that would respond to a different element of the game. For example, when the campaign in Segura has been quiet, we have we have presented battle opportunities and skirmish opportunities as well that have had to do with the other agendas of the orcs that are there rather than the pure fighting agenda.
So usually the last thing we put up before an event is a Wind of Fortune, Wind of War, that tells loosely what the battle plans are, isn't it?
Yeah, so with the end of the Winds of War, we have a short summary which gives probably about a paragraph just about each of the battle opportunities that we're going to present to the military council. And then as the Wind of Fortunes sort of are presented, we sort of expand on the different skirmish opportunities that we're offering as well at the event. Normally, we kind of collate those all into essentially one Wind of Fortune, where we detail essentially all of the different times that the military engagements will be happening over the weekend.
So we've done that for a couple of reasons, haven't we? We've done that so for accessibility reasons and so that people hit the field with some information that they can role play with straight away.
Yeah, very much. I think in terms of the accessibility, that's really helped, I guess, both us, but obviously players out there who want to get involved in various parts of the game, but previously sort of felt, it's very hard for them to get the information that would sort of tell them if they could actually easily go on that, or sort of if they would be, their character's skills would be required. So, I think that certainly helped them greatly, and it's definitely a continuing sort of process there, and we can sort of lay out sort of how potentially skirmishes might go, how suitable they could be, both in terms of, I guess, sort of players' own sort of accessibility needs, but also sort of in terms of probably the type of encounter that we're offering. So potentially, a much more low combat encounter, where the threat of actual physical combat is very, very low. We still get the intimidation and fear factor from being separated from everybody in Anvil.
Okay, so I think now we move on to military council and when they get more information.
Yeah, so I guess that happens 7 o'clock, kind of the Friday evening.
That's the
before
muster,
that,
isn't
players have got the muster. Yes, so that's the point at which Graham will be in the military council as his civil servant. I'll arrive as well, and essentially the generals get all their kind of downtime reports from their armies, detailing the strength of their forces. But then we also pass out the 3, 4, 5 different briefs that we have prepared for the battles. And essentially what I have prepared there is an in-character side of paper. We kind of always make sure it's essentially one side of A4, printed out for each of the generals, which details each of the opportunities that are available. And then, they have, generally it's a space of 2 hours to, I guess, read through those, deliberate and discuss the various opportunities, what they might gain from it, and obviously what they can get out from the campaign at that point by taking a particular battle, but also sort of discussing things about which of the different imperial nations are best suited to going on each of the engagements. Obviously, each of those battles will be set in a particular nation, so there tends to be a strong willingness from the generals of, say, Wintermark to make sure that their forces are going on a battle that will be held in Semasuak or Hardmark, for instance. But obviously, as well, there's a lot of deliberation there about if we put in opportunities where a particular sort of ritual might need to be done, and which nations have access to covens that could cast particular rituals. So there's, I guess, lots of excitement and interest there. And the information that we provide at that stage is very much kind of that outline of essentially what has happened in the campaign, what essentially the barbarian orcs are doing at that particular point, and why this battle is happening. So what the orcs are trying to achieve. So are they moving to intercept an army? Are they about to raid a kind of imperial settlement? But then we actually present the opportunity. So what the players are able to go and do as their characters, how those heroes of the Empire, as we term them, can kind of intervene against the orc forces and what they need to do, be it, securing ground, sort of the strategic objectives. It could be taking out, kind of in barbarian commanders. It could be casting particular rituals. I think we've done that several times in things with the Druj Miasma and the Valon.
We tend not to have a single goal. Am I right? We write so that there are 2 or 3 or 4 things going on that will get the Empire benefits if they succeed, and the more of those they achieve, the more successful they are at the battle opportunity.
Exactly, and I think whilst you can easily look at one battle and say yes, the objective of this is to do A, there will certainly be other objectives within that I guess, yes, as Andy has said, gain additional benefits. Maybe they can force the battle to be even a greater victory, but it might come at a particular cost to them. And also, I think one of the really exciting things we occasionally do is throw in sort of more plot-related objectives, Andy, that, they're not vital to the battle succeeding, but...
We've done a battle, for example, where there were some coincidental archaeologists trapped on the battlefield who you could rescue, who would provide something completely different, but not have any real impact on the outcome of the battle itself. About the only objective we definitely don't do, I think. Am I right here? We tend not to put in just kill the orcs.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, obviously, the battles will involve lots of killing orcs, but yeah, we don't tend to be kind of putting in sort of kill counts. You must kill 500, 1,000, 1,500 orcs. It will be either very targeted, so strike against their commanders, or it becomes more holding actions against the orc forces, or potentially sort of driving them back. So yes, killing them is involved, but
but it's rarely just a murder fest, and it's not always orcs either. Of course, it's not as common, obviously, because the barbarian orcs represent the main threat to the empire. But we've done a Night of the Living Dead battle with a load of undead that was very popular. We've done the odd human battle way back in. Well, that's going back quite a distance now.
We had one a couple of years ago where we had a mix of orcs and human forces, and that was in Spiral. So the enemies were essentially under the influence of the Black Plateau and kind of other spiritual malign presences. So that was kind of quite a different battle for us to run, actually, because we're not tied to the essentially the very strong sort of archetypes and sort of genres that the Grendel, the Thule, the Jotun and the Druge fall into. So yeah, it's an opportunity for us to mix things up.
So basically, it's player choice which battle they do, who goes on that battle, and how they approach that battle.
Very much so. And the briefs that we write are essentially there to give them as solid an information that are based on essentially the facts and figures of what we know we want to run with the battle, so that they can make informed choices about who and when and which battles get taken.
Yeah, because this touches back on something Andy and I discussed a while ago, where we don't lie to players.
Very much so, yeah.
There's another element, of course, which occurs to me when we're working on battles. I'm not sure how obvious it is from the player point of view, but we try and think about what the players are going to think about a battle, and we try very hard not to offer either no-brainers, so battles that are so important that you have to take them, or nobody's going to touch you with the barge pole battles, which are battles that seem less interesting or dull, or are dealing with something we know the players do not want to touch with a barge pole. And so on any given event, with some exceptions, because obviously we're not dogmatic about it, we try and make sure that when you look at the battle opportunities you've got in front of you, there's not an obvious immediate, we definitely have to do that battle and we shouldn't do that battle because whatever. And that's something we've learned over years of presenting battles to the military.
Exactly.
Council.
So how often do players surprise you with their choices?
All the time.
All the time, yeah. I think it's interesting as well because we kind of get, I guess, a little bit of a kind of teaser in some ways when the winds of war have gone up and we've hinted at the battle opportunities. They don't tell you exactly what you need to be doing in the battle and what forces you may be against, but we get to make a push against the orcs in the Mournwald. That's a big focus of the campaign. Lots of people get excited on social media, and obviously people are kind of oh, this is what we want to take even before the event starts. But when Graham and I are in the military council and we're actually giving out those briefs, you can see essentially characters that their minds are already starting to change about, oh, hang on, maybe this other option that we'd initially dismissed is actually, much more interesting. What we can get out of it is a much bigger sort of reward.
So they come back for a second meeting on Friday night, don't they, where they tell you what their choices are?
So the choices are made at the muster. That's the point where essentially I write down as my sort of civil service NPC. I take those essentially the battle sides because for the next part of my role, it's vital that I know who's going to be monstering the next day. and essentially which battle has been taken. So I will then leave military council and head back up behind the hedge to essentially discuss with Andy Connell and a couple of other people like the referee team about how we're going to implement the next day's battle.
I think it's worth just briefly talking about the battle sides. So we use the Sentinel Gate. The Sentinel Gate is a teleportation gate that allows you to go anywhere in the Empire or where the Empire is interested in, but it's controlled by the powers of fate, which is essentially what we can run. Under normal circumstances, the Sentinel Gate can only take a small number of people. That's a standard conjunction, and that is how we keep our skirmishes and our encounter tents in a similar balance. But for the battles, for the 2 battle opportunities we have over the course of the weekend, the Sentinel Gate can take a small number of nations each time. And that's basically a conceit we've put together that forces the players to effectively split their fighting forces in half. And the other part of the negotiation at the muster is about which nations are going to fight on which battle. And that's what the players ultimately, hopefully, care about. And they divvy themselves up into roughly 2 50-50 sides. But what that also means is the players in the nations who aren't fighting on the Saturday, are the other players who will be playing the enemy on the Saturday, and then they will go on the battle on the Sunday, and the players who have fought on the Saturday will monster on the Sunday. And that's why we get the players. The military council ultimately, in fact, just the military council decides who's going to fight on each battle, and so directly who's going to monster each battle. They set the sides. We don't do that. And there's a set of maths which which Graham works out, which is based on a number of factors, which I'm not even going to try and guess at because it's Graham math stuff.
It's arcane trickery.
It's arcane trickery. Each nation has a numerical weighting, and the military council, there is an in-character numerical weighting, and the military council has to balance the 2 forces within a certain narrow corridor. So Wintermark might have a value of 14, and the League might be a 3, and the Brass Coast might be an 8, and so
these are entirely speculative numbers for me.
these are entirely speculative. I'm just making them up. I pay no attention to them because they're Graham numbers. And then at the end of the day, we've got 2 sides, and we know who's fighting and who's monstering for each of the 2 battles, and then that is the numbers that Tom takes back. And now I'll go back to being quiet again, just having explained that, because I don't think we touched on it.
Yeah, so I guess we've got to the point there where essentially I am, as the prognosticator, leaving the muster. It's at that point that the generals will start discussing other things of interest. Maybe there are eternal audiences they want to sort of request sort of favours from and boons or whatever. But at the point, for me, that's where I am now starting to work on the next day's battle. We have the battle sides. And for Andy Connell and I in the battle team, what we then look at is essentially who's going to be monstering. So it's great to know who the playing sides will be, but we don't need to worry about that. We're actually now interested in who the barbarians are. And from those monstering nations, we start to look at the which nations have elite military units. So the EMUs, the EMUs that we might have, who are those groups of players who really put effort into sort of forming a barbarian unit, cohesive kit and sort of formation. We work out what they might be doing in the battle, and then obviously which nations will be fighting, and essentially which barbarian orc types, essentially the different subtypes of the Jotun or the Grendel or the Druge. We sort of start breaking up which nation which role will we get the High Guard monsters to be taking in this battle alongside their EMU. If Dawn are monstering as well, we think, well, we've got a Dornish EMU who have this speciality. How can we make sure they get a prominent role in the monstering? And
so I was going to talk about it later, but it might be worth talking about EMUs now and what they actually are and how you make one.
Wow, my goodness, that's, I think, potentially a whole other topic. But yeah, I think maybe Andy Connell's going to be a good person to talk to about that. But EMUs very, I think, succinctly are a group of players who together will come monstering as a single unit. So much as you may sort of within a group at Empire have, your friends will go onto the battlefield together, you'll fight as a unit. We're trying to do the same with the barbarians. So a group from the Brass Coast may end up portraying a particular type of Druge force, and together they will fight as one cohesive unit, charging together, retreating, sort of tending their injured, and we help them by providing them with extra things like sort of herbs and resources, a couple of magic items, and we sort of empower them to act as a unit with their own commanders and sort of chains of command.
Excellent. I'll put a note to talk to that about Connell. So what we're saying is that they're basically a group that will turn up as a group who are used to fighting together, and you can give them a specific role in the battle because
assuming it's relevant. I mean, obviously, if the players have not chosen a Druge battle on the Saturday and the High Guard Druge EMU unit is monstering on the Saturday, we don't add a Druge unit to a Jotun or a Grendel battle. So it is up to the players whether they get to whether other players get to use their EMUs or not. It's not something we consider when we're doing battles.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's not something the players consider, but it is really nice when it's able to happen.
Indeed, and when they do, when we do have those EMUs, they really do add some extra flavour and sort of interest. The levels of kit, the monstering kit that those players bring, kind of pushes it up to the kind of next level, and just makes the battle sort of much more interesting and exciting. And it's an opportunity for us as well to really sort of showcase how exciting and interesting the kind of orc, barbarian forces really are. So we can get those EMUs doing things like column charges or skirmishing in a particular way. And that, I guess, all comes into sort of the very quick discussions that we need to have within the battle team about the deposition of forces. What are these EMUs? What are the individual monster nations going to be doing in the battle that we've already laid out? And then once that's been decided and we know essentially who's going to be involved from the monstering side, we will send either Dave Henderson or Andy Connell from the battle team. They will go back to the military council where we have the field commanders meeting. Tends to be kind of 10:30, 11 o'clock on the Friday evening, where we then present to them the kind of more tactical level options and information of the battle. So that will be the War Scout saying, you're going to encounter this sort of force, or we know that deep in the woodland there is a fortification that, we can tell you how you're going to get to it. So it's very much a very much lower, higher detailed view of what's going to be happening in the battle.
Great. And then it's all their problem, isn't it, until 11 o'clock the next day?
Yeah, very much. So I guess they have, from say 11 o'clock, they've got a couple of hours in the evening to really sort of discuss amongst themselves what they might be doing, making sure that they do actually have that ritual team ready. There's lots of opportunities for them players to kind of, get their magical enchantments, get hold of extra potions and things ready for the battle. Obviously, I think it's one of the great things that working sort of to emphasize the roles of the different orc units as well. With the Druge, for instance, players will be wanting to stock up on potions that will help them against the kind of the venoms that the Druge might use and all the different traumatic wounds that they might sort of get from fighting that particular enemy. So there's lots of excitement that comes from the player side of it, indeed, yeah. Yeah,
because the players have now got historical knowledge of encountering these enemies before that they can work on.
Definitely. And there's also sometimes, I think, where we've thrown new things at the military council to work on, there's that little bit of panic sort of, can we get this thing sorted in time? Do we have enough priests to be able to kind of offer beneficial auras to all of the players going through? So that's things like, I guess, some of the battles that we've fought in Spiral, where the influence of the Black Plateau kind of really messes with the emotions of those in the area. We have mechanical role-playing effects which come into force when you are in that area, which we use with both the orcs and the players. But the players then have maybe all of Saturday to kind of work out who needs to be getting sort of spiritual auras put on them to strengthen them against the kind of the harsh sort of metaphysical environment that they're going to encounter on that battle. So yeah, lots for the players to do before the battle actually happens.
So I think I know what you do on Saturdays because I'm usually with you.
I'm not, so you can tell me.
So from about 10:15, after we've had the morning egregore meeting, I head up towards... Oh. What?
Yes,
that's what time I start to head across the field to the Sentinel Gate, on the grounds that I'll get distracted at least twice on the way.
So yeah, I guess my battle morning starts at about 8 o'clock in the morning, where we make sure our skirmish crew are getting up, awake and getting their breakfast in. There's probably a tiny amount of trash talking, I guess, when we're in the queue for Moorish, getting our breakfasts. But then from really 8:30 in the morning, we're getting both the skirmish crew and the battle prep tent, which is kind of the area where both our skirmish team, the NPCs, all of the plot writers are based. We get that ready to receive essentially all the player monsters who come up from 9:30 in the morning is when we open that up, making sure that we can get, hundreds of people through there into orc masks and all the kit and the armor, where we're briefing them on what their roles are going to be in the battle. So there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes preparation from us and our skirmish team, making sure we're ready for the players, helping them get ready. So, Claire, you're heading over to the Sentinel Gate just after time in. We close essentially monster kitting up from 10:30, so you need to be there before 10:30 to get into monster kit if you are monstering that battle. And then maybe sort of 15, 20 minutes later, I will come and join Claire and Emma over at the Sentinel Gate. So you'll see us there in our red and blacks and our yellow and blacks sort of hanging
that's
around
Woods,
just behind the Sentinel Gate.
Yes.
Yep, our head referee. And between the three of us, we're there to essentially coordinate, I guess, the start of the battle from very much the player side. But also I'm there to liaise with all of our sort of battle support red and blacks, making sure that the orcs are ready in position, that SFX have got their smoke ready, the people who are on our respawn points are all ready, and we know how the battle is going to start. Emma's there coordinating with the referees, making sure that they're in position for the start of the battle, ready to follow particular units, meet up with the enemy orcs who may be in the woodland. And Claire, you're there essentially coordinating from the in-character side and the egregores, aren't you?
Yeah, so from about 10:30, I give the egregores 10-minute warnings for when the gate is going to open, because we open the gate at 11 o'clock. So if their nations are having a drama or slowing down or just seem to have forgotten where they're meant to be that morning, they can hustle from their side.
I think that's a key thing to mention, of course. We had worked with a lot of different ways of doing it, but ultimately we've settled on what works, which is the Sentinel Gate opens at 11 o'clock, the battle starts at 11 o'clock, regardless of whether the players have turned up for it or not.
And regardless of whether the monster crew are ready too.
Oh, indeed, regardless of whether the monster crew are ready. So the in-character battle and the Sentinel Gate opening started at 11.
Yeah,
Yes,
the egregores will go up to open the gate, regardless of whether the players are there or not. But they will do all their best to hustle them up there first.
It's something I want to
Yeah,
just
it's
briefly.
certainly-
No, I wanted to digress
No, go
briefly
on, Andy.
because we've been talking a lot in terms of nations and everybody getting together and everybody fighting. But I think it's important to remember that while the battles are a key part of Empire, they're not the whole thing. Unlike, I mean, I know there are other systems where the expectation is everybody from a given battle, from a given faction or nation will turn up to a battle. Our expectation is very different. You only go on a battle and ultimately, as a consequence, monster a battle if you want to go on a battle. We have lots of people who don't go on battles, who use the opportunity for all the heroes being away fighting on the battlefield to have shorter queues at Moorish and to smack talk the jocks while they're away fighting. So there's no expectation that anybody is going to go on.
The game very much continues in Anvil while the battles are on.
Yeah.
And as the years have gone on, I think the game in Anvil has become quite active and vibrant during the battles. You ran an autumn market definitely for the Eternals during that period.
Yep.
Last year, the year before.
We tend
not even our years anymore.
We tend to focus on plot where we know that the more martially minded characters are likely to either be playing or monstering. We do our level best never to run a plot that is going to end up falling on its backside because the players in question are off monstering. We're much less fussed about a plot that might go a bit pear-shaped because the players are off fighting, because that's an in-character choice. But we're really careful, as best we can, never to accidentally punish somebody for doing their monstering obligation. Anyway, that was just something I thought it was worth mentioning. There's no expectation that you will fight on a battle.
Oh, goodness, no. And I think when you look at the numbers, I think it's probably only half of the players at Empire are kind of actually, actively involved in the battle. So yeah, as Claire said, life continues in Anvil.
Is it worth talking about that obligation I mentioned?
Play one monster
one.
Play one monster one.
Yeah, definitely. That's part of, I guess, the rules of the game. It's, essentially that obligation that you have if you are coming through the Sentinel Gate as your player character. we are expecting you to then return the favour to come and monster the next day.
Actually,
obviously, if go on, Claire.
I think the key point there is it is a rule.
It is, yes. It's there in the rules. If you turn up to monster on the Saturday, you can come and play on the Sunday. That's fine. If you play on the Saturday, we're expecting you to turn up the next day to actually monster. And within those rules, if for whatever reason you cannot make your monstering slot, we are expecting you to not play a battle before you next monster. So essentially, you would need to be missing your next playing opportunity to make up that missed monstering slot. And obviously there are certain scenarios. I think one that often comes up is parents. Sometimes they're able to split that responsibility between themselves, but on the whole, it works fantastically well as a system. And there's lots of flexibility in terms of the monstering that we're now offering. And I think that's certainly developed over the time Empire has been running. We understand better, I guess, sort of what different people want to be doing when it comes to monstering, but also reflecting the diversity that the player characters have when they go through the Sentinel Gate as well. So if you think there are lots of people who go through, you may have friends who are, frontline sword and shield fighters working with polearms, but then you have people who are kind of focusing more on kind of being physicians, mages who cast supporting spells to sort of help heal fighters up, mend equipment, empower them. So there are a lot of people who don't engage directly in the fighting, despite them going through the Sentinel Gate. And monstering really now offers a wider range of those kind of things for the monsters as well. So we're trying to mirror as best we can the kind of forces that the players are able to take as well. So making it even easier.
One thing that comes up a lot is people talking about non-combat monster slots.
Yes.
So
it's an odd one because obviously people use the word non-combatant in loads of different ways, which aren't always the ways we use non-combatant.
Yeah, so from the battle team's perspective, we don't use the term non-com at Empire. If you don't want to be in combat at all, the best thing to do is just not go through the Sentinel Gate onto a military skirmish or onto a battlefield. That removes that problem entirely. One of the terms that we use much more is essentially low combat monstering. So that is your orc healers. They are people who might be playing human slaves, carrying kind of water for the orcs. They may be support mages. There may be kind of other opportunities that come up depending on the battle. And they are, people we're not expecting to get right into the thick of the fighting, but, they may actually get engaged in combat.
Exactly. And obviously there's only a proportion of those roles available in that battle because...
Yeah, of course. I mean, we don't want everybody turning up as kind of an orc healer to heal 5 essentially fighting orcs. We're expecting those people who really are committing to kind of frontline fighting roles as their characters to really be doing the same as monstering. But obviously there's no expectation kind of on those people who play a mage to, be put in full chain and get right into the middle of the fight. We can work with them as best we can to support kind of what they want to be doing in monstering. And again, that's a great thing to get involved with an EMU for, is there are lots of opportunities within those organizations to find a role that really suits you when it comes to monstering.
But at the end of the day, the battlefield is a place where fighting is taking place. And if that is a problem for you, well, that makes the battle less accessible. You shouldn't go on the battle if you can't fight, because we can't guarantee that you're not going to get attacked, and we can't offer roles in which you don't have the risk as a monster of being involved in a fight. The battles are where fights take place.
And as somebody who walks around in essentially a tabard, that should denote that I am out of character, I get hit on the battlefield as well. So yes, just having a radio doesn't make you immune to arrows or be whacked in the face by a pole arm.
I'm going to seg you quite happily from the fact you just mentioned being out of character. One of the things we're really keen on, from both points of view, we want to encourage the play. Yes. The battles are not an out of character space. They are exactly as in character as Anvil is. No. We expect everybody to role play on the battles, and that includes the monsters. One of the things that we have been very keen on, and it took us a little while to get all the things in place. The enemies of the Empire are still people. They still have characters.
Very much.
Part of the brief for player volunteers is around the characterization of your orc. We try and make sure that people know what's going on the battlefield, what the motivation of the orcs is, for example, of the enemy is. But we are really keen that everybody role plays. We've even recently, I think Steve Kirkbride has started getting some of the NPC crew together to come and do monstering as well, who aren't doing NPC roles on the field, just to try and make sure that we drive and remind everybody that the barbarian orcs, just like the player characters, are in character people with their own goals.
And their own separate cultures and ideals.
Yeah, within some rules. So the monstering contingent on battle has more outer character restrictions on what they can do. So, for example, player volunteer monsters can't execute other players. They're expected to follow the instructions of the officers, who are often skirmish team. They're not allowed to loot the fallen except in very specific circumstances, again under the guidances of the skirmish team. But we want the experience of fighting the Druze, the Jotun and the Grendel to feel different for the players, but we also want to make sure that the monster volunteers are having as much fun as possible. We don't want people playing the awful Dungeons and Dragons style 2-hit dice attack the party in a mob while yelling Grumsh orcs that are just there to die and to make the players lose some hit points before they get their treasure.
No, definitely. And I think Andy Connell will be able to talk sort of a lot more about what we aim to achieve on the battles, essentially in terms of that role playing and the tactics that we want those orc units to kind of really sort of get on board with and role play with. So yeah, there is no reason that you shouldn't. There's every opportunity to role play as your character when you go through the Sentinel Gate in a very different situation. You know, it's if you go through and you're scared, it's because you're in the middle of a battle. Your character is scared. You know, it can be a terrifying sort of place to find yourself as a character. So enjoy it. Lap that up. You're fighting for your life.
I don't get to see the battles often, but the fact that it is 400 to 500 people versus 400 to 500 other people, high action often, dangerous, risky scenario, which is a real contrast to Anvil, which has 2,000 people on it, but you are reasonably confident you are safe while you're there. That's not the case when you go through the Sentinel Gate. But seeing the pictures, particularly of things like those massed ranks of Grendel with their war beasts bearing down on an imperial line that is trying to hold a fortification against them and stuff. It's really cool. It's some of the most cinematic stuff that we do at Empire, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a situation that you don't get put in real life. It's one of the reasons we've started running the new player skirmishes, because you can have an idea of what it's going to be like, but you don't actually know until you do it. And the adrenaline spike from being on a battlefield is a real life adrenaline spike, not an in-character one. What's
the new player skirmish?
On Friday afternoons before the event starts, we run a skirmish for new players, and we've got a number of players who assist us running it, like Tim Baker and Johnny Fisher. So we give the new players an opportunity to try on orc masks and hit each other, basically. So we bring them in and we split them into two groups, half put an orc mask in, and we usually run a very quick rescue the NPC scenario, and then they swap over and do it the other way. And then, because if Tim is nothing, he's an opportunist, he then makes them both practice fighting retreats. which I think is Tim preparing them for the future when they'll be useful to him. But that's your chance to try on a mask, find out how it feels, if it makes you feel claustrophobic. It's your chance to have... We probably have about 60 people there, so it's nowhere near the size of a battle, but it is a chance to be in combat and hit people and be hit. So you can know what it feels like and you can judge how you react to it. I think it's a really important thing to do. And I think we've talked before as well about if you're playing a non-combat character, you can still come a monster, can't you?
Oh, yes, that's a really good point. Yes, you don't have to play a battle to be allowed to monster. I think we're really enthusiastic about people who just want to come along and have a fight, even though they're playing a character who isn't interested in getting onto a battlefield.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a few players out there who I think we see them both days. There's some really enthusiastic people out there who just, I want a monster twice, and yeah, that's great. Yeah,
I'm really keen on us doing things that remove sources of anxiety when you're role playing. And I think monstering a battle without playing it, or coming to the new player skirmish or anything like that, is a really good way of doing that.
I imagine
think
you can get the experience of being on that 1,000-person high action, high octane, intense, dramatic thing without having to build a character that does it, or risking your character getting killed if you come in monster.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly, I think getting involved in monstering, even if it's you're not sure if something you want to do in the future, come along, try it out. If you suddenly decide it is not for you, that's fine. We're going to support you as best we can in that. But if it's something that you enjoy doing, come and do it. You'll get that love of actually, I guess, as Claire said, the adrenaline of it, but the sheer joy of actually being in an environment that can be quite scary, both in character and out of character. But ultimately, it's a fairly safe place to enjoy that kind of experience.
Yeah, and I think it's worth trying at least once, because, like I say, it's something that hopefully you'll never be in real life.
No, exactly.
So we've talked about how we plan battles, how we run battles. We've talked a certain amount about getting involved in monstering. So what happens after a battle's finished? I know what happens after they all go through the gate.
Okay.
I go and have my breakfast.
Okay. I guess, do you see them come out of the Sentinel Gate as well?
Usually by then something else has happened to me, and I've run off to deal with that. I know if the battle's gone badly, because I have a flurry of radio calls from the egregores trying to do what we call dead or alives.
Yep. Okay. So I guess 60 to 90 minutes after the players disappear through the Sentinel Gate, they start to return. And at that point, basically, we wait until all the players have cleared the battlefield, and then essentially we start standing down the player monsters. And that can happen. That really depends on how the battle goes. Sometimes we're able to let player monsters go early. If we know that there's no need for them to be respawned onto the battle, we can let them, return to playing in Anvil as soon as they're ready. But otherwise, it's that slow process of getting, several hundred monsters out of masks, out of armor, out of kind of soft kit, cleaning face paint and stuff. So, our skirmish team help our player monster volunteers do that. We collect in all of the resources and herbs and ribbons that we've given out to the player monsters as everybody leaves the battlefield. And then basically, I guess, two sort of separate things start happening. Emma will kind of collect all of the referees together, and they will have kind of a referee debrief talking about, I guess, how the battle has gone from kind of the rules side of things, kind of the sort of incidents that might have happened. And then essentially we do very much the same in terms of talking within the battle team just about how that battle went, if there are any quick lessons we need to learn, checking in with our skirmish crew. Obviously, it's a great opportunity for them to get out of kit, go and get some lunch, and prepare for the afternoon skirmishes. But then we're actually, myself and Emma, we will then come in to see Matt, to see Raf, and to see Graham, just to kind of debrief from the battle and say, look, this is what has happened. We expect the players, yes, they have completed this objective, or they failed to do this certain thing. And also a really cool thing happened. Maybe we can consider doing some plot with that later on, and kind of giving the game team a little bit of a debrief. Okay.
So how do the players find out what happened in the battle? Or do they extrapolate from what their own experiences?
Yeah, so I guess historically it was very much kind of we would be sending people in to feedback. I think that happens less and less now. We've got very good at kind of making it very obvious, essentially, what the outcome of the battle was. If you need to hold a certain bit of ground for a certain time and you're successful, that should be very obvious. Killing particular orc commanders or something, again, that's an outcome that is very obvious. If your ritual team completes the ritual that you've been sort of outlined to do, that's an obvious thing. We do obviously at times will send in war scouts to find generals in the military council. Graham, as his NPC as well, can feed extra details back. But very much we're at a position now where the outcomes of those battles tend to be very obvious, and if needs be, we can always kind of push that result out through avenues, through civil servants.
I think we
that's often, really good because.
So I was just going to say, I think one of the things we do quite a lot now is we brief Sam Sulkin, who is the Herald of the Military Council.
Yes.
And at the next military council meeting, she is able to confirm what the situation is as near as the as we know it in terms of objectives achieved and likely outcomes. So we have a servant in place who's.
It's probably worth mentioning as well. I guess it's that strange feedback mechanism of, obviously, from the end of a battle, we know ourselves as the battle team, as the ref team, we know out of character how that battle went. It's the slightly difficult thing of how does that in character information come out through PD from behind a hedge and onto the field. And having Sam, I think, is a great example, as those NPCs embedded in the game. Several hours later, it's maybe she's getting messages from civil servants, from the prognosticators. There were reports coming in from where that battle was that says, yes, the enemy's in full retreat. This massive victory has been achieved, and we can confirm that the enemy are moving away. So yeah, it's trying to make that in character as well.
Yeah, that's nice, because it's much more organic and story than us going, yes, tick this box, tick this box.
Exactly, yeah.
So once we've done all that, we do it all again for Sunday.
Yeah, pretty much. It's nice because we have a little bit more time within the battle team to work out exactly what we're doing the next day. But we're also running a good number of skirmishes out sort of through the afternoon and into the evening as well. So, that's us trying to grab some time to discuss exactly what we're doing the next day. But yeah, we repeat it kind of 8, 9 p.m. on the Saturday. We send the War Scouts to meet with the military council again, discuss with the field commander what's going to happen on the Sunday. And then, that process repeats itself. We get up early in the morning, we get everybody monstering sort of into kit and onto the field. And then I guess, afterwards we have the same kind of repeat. As soon as players have exited the field, the skirmish team, absolutely amazing. We give them a bit of a rest, and then they start helping pack down essentially all the equipment that we've used over the weekend.
Yeah, I've got a note here to talk about the skirmish team and how fantastic they are, because while the players will fight a battle and monster a battle and maybe do a skirmish or two, the skirmish team start skirmishing on Friday night, then they do a battle on Saturday, then they skirmish Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening, and then they do another battle, and then they might do a skirmish after that, mightn't they?
We don't do skirmishes on the Sunday anymore. Just I think in terms of logistics, it's quite tricky.
But then they do a bunch of takedown.
Oh yeah,
they work.
Yeah, we have a whole container now full of, I guess, swords and masks and crossbows, arrows, monster costumes, like some of the giant big sort of Grendel monsters that we have, the lawn kit and everything. So we have a giant container full of all of that, and that needs to be taken out and put away every event as well. So yeah, they're absolutely fantastic. It's a highly active crew role. It's kind of, very much the sort of same intensity as I guess the Red Hats go through in, the physical exertions. But, they're a great team. They work incredibly well. The camaraderie is fantastic to see. They get a real buzz out of all the kind of engagements that they're doing, throughout the weekend. And we're there trying to run lots of exciting and interesting roles for them as well. So, they're not just playing the same orc over and over again.
I've been on skirmishes a couple of times, sort of observing and helping, and the enthusiasm and will that they throw themselves into the different roles is just fantastic.
I'm always pleased when we manage to find something else for them to do, particularly on an evening. We often try, particularly on a Saturday, to have a more a non-field. I'm trying to think the right phrase for it, but basically we try and give the skirmish team an opportunity to do something that isn't fighting jocks on the encounter field. So we've had them do things like, I remember, for example, they played. They were all in ghillie suits, and they played the creeping tendrils of Lothair, essentially just creeping around and being weird and unnatural in the Hall of Worlds at the Spring Magicians, who were there to shout at this powerful herald of Lothair, who was just me with a microphone behind the screen in a towel or whatever. And they're all creating this atmosphere of this weird and unnatural and alien fungus monster speaking to the players. Or I think we did them all up as Death Knights for a Kayla audience, in which we absolutely
We call them
packed the
Grim
tent.
Legion.
Grim Legion, for the Grim Legion of Kayla, and absolutely packed a small encounter tent and sent 4 players in to be glared at by our skirmish team done up as goth warriors.
They were amazing.
Oh, and
that,
of course,
that picture is actually my background to my work laptop.
Oh, right. And of course, we also know that they know the Barbarian Alt briefs really well. They're the most aware of the abilities. So we've had things like when we've had summits with the Jotun occasionally, in which the skirmish team have played the Jotun warriors who are going to be there. I remember that they were also part of a big delegation of Druge that went onto the main field one evening to discuss one of the extremely successful Druge peace treaties. I really rate working with the skirmish team, because they're a lot more experienced working together as a cohesive group, as a gang, basically. They're a gang of role
I guess because we forced them to do that. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I think it's fantastic as well. I guess over the past couple of years at Empire, as the game has grown, the number of people involved in skirmish, sort of the skirmish team, has grown as well. I mean, when I started running the battles as I do, what's that, 4.5 years ago, probably more now. I guess we've missed a whole year, haven't we? But yeah, when we were back on the previous site, I think we had 25, maybe 30 skirmish team at the time. But, we're now hitting 85, 90 an event, which, that's kind of like...
That's fab.
Should we talk about joining skirmish team, or is that something we should leave for Connell?
Yeah, no, I think we can mention it a little bit here. But yeah, there's 90 of us. I guess when Matt started Empire, the kind of big buzzword, really was the enemies, the barbarians, the skirmish team were called the 100, because... Matt wanted 100 monsters, 100 NPC skirmish team, and we're very nearly there. But yeah, we have people who've been with us right from the start of Empire. We've got people who are, coming to Empire for the first time, but have been LARPing for, years. We've got people who've brought friends, from friends from home, friends from university. We've got people who, have been LARPing for a long time, and just kind of, it's like a bit of a holiday from going to LARP. You're doing something that you enjoy, but you're not necessarily having to be a player character. You can experience lots of different roles. So just like playing, I think, and how we talked about when you come play a monstering, we're starting to find there are lots of different types of role that we can do in skirmish team. It is not just about being the best fighter or somebody who's really strong and can climb inside a giant monster costume. We've got roles there for people who want to be those barbarian kind of medics and kind of wizards who kind of supporting the rest of the team and making these cohesive units. So I think it's the fantastic thing that we're now able to deliver with the skirmish team, is that they really are like a crack military unit. We talk about, I think, player groups, you fight together, you fight, maybe one battle, an event, you might go with a couple of your friends on one skirmish. Our skirmish team are fighting 2 battles and probably 20 skirmishes over the course of a weekend together, and they're very good fighters.
So I know
Sorry,
go on.
Yeah, so yeah, despite being outnumbered on kind of literary, they're able to hold their own, and I think that makes, the monstering that we do at Empire and the encounters that we're able to provide absolutely amazing because of it.
So I know I can find this information on the wiki probably, but how would I volunteer to join the skirmish team?
So I think it's on the wiki, and I'm sure we can link it afterwards, probably up here somewhere. We'll be able to, it's contacting PD. You'll get put through to essentially Andy and the battle team, who I guess will kind of outline what we're expecting from you. The skirmish team very much is a full-time crew role. We're expecting you there, from time in. We tend to work you through till 10 o'clock at night, where we have a battle brief. And then obviously we're up at 8 o'clock in the morning and then running through till 10 again the next day. There are breaks obviously during that, but it's very full on, very dedicated kind of crew role. So yeah, that information is on the wiki, but yeah, if you are interested, please get in contact. If you've, I guess, recently or, character has died and you want to, take a year out of kind of playing, maybe get in contact. What we don't want, I guess, are kind of casual members of the skirmish team. I'll play an event, I'll come on skirmish team. We want to kind of, I guess, preserve the illusion as much as possible. We're expecting you a member of the team, for as many events as you can do. So
yeah, because it really is a role that thrives on the team a team.
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
It?
And,
yeah.
we've got lots of people who help make kit for each other, kind of encourage sort of, we help sort of get them masks. There's lots of people who make cool kit. People are trying, we've got a couple of members of the team, Chris and Will, writing kind of songs for the barbarians, so
oh, wow.
it's not just 30 Jotun orcs jump out of a bush and fight you. It's, you're ambushing a marching column who, they're singing away and, calling on the summer eternals. And then all of a sudden the players are there coming through, the characters are starting to engage in a scenario that's much more like real life.
So it's certainly not a drop-in role for somebody who wants to try out LARP. It's a serious team of NPCs whose role is physically orientated. I guess.
Yeah, very much. And I guess, Andy, just as your members in your plot writing, you're after NPCs who know really well the Empire brief. You know who a Navarre is and sort of a particular part of Navarre culture, or you need to know, your NPC needs to know about Axos and how their society works. We don't want people who are brand new to LARP, who have very little understanding, I guess, of the combat, but also the Empire world. Those people who understand how the Empire itself works, what the barbarian nations are. It's people who have that experience are really valued members of the team. But yes, obviously that's not to exclude those people who are keen and interested. But getting some experience of playing Empire, I think, is fantastic before you join the skirmish crew.
We say the same thing with the NPC team. We would much prefer people to get a bit of an experience of the game from the player's side before they join the NPC team. Just experience has shown that they have a better understanding of what it is that we're doing. Basically, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Anyway,
definitely.
I've completed my list of things to talk about. To Tom about. Yep. So.
I don't think we have any.
And I've started on my list of things to talk to Andy Connell about.
Excellent.
Okay, we'll see if we can't get Big Andy in for one. Thank you, Tom, for joining us, for giving up.
It's been good, and I think, it's been really interesting actually. And it's been, I guess, good to talk to you, and I guess talk about what I do at Empire, and I guess what we'll hope to do very soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
I feel like we should have some generic questions we ask people at the end, like what's your favourite toasty or.
Okay, I've been doing a lot of these recently. Win? So, favorite Orc Nation.
Favorite Orc Nation.
You can say Imperial because I know you played Imperial Orc for a year or two.
So I certainly think probably the Jotun for me.
Right.
I think I've been involved, I guess, in the plot side of that and really fleshing them out as barbarians. So yeah, the Jotun.
You are brand new to Empire. What is your what character are you creating, and what part of the game are you most excited about getting involved in? That's one that we did recently from.
That's a nice one, yeah. Yeah, what nation?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Brand new. Brand new.
Well, we can answer this, can't we? He'd be an Imperial Orc.
No. Knowing what you know now.
I've done Imperial Orcs. No. Brand new. I think I would be looking to do Urizen. Yeah, certainly Urizen. I think as a nation I'd love to try out. It's a nation I've not played. Played the Wizard, certainly at Empire, but I think, Urizen could be an interesting.
And what are you doing at Time In with this new Urizen character? What's your aim for Friday night?
Aim for Friday night, I'd be obviously wanting to go to Conclave. That seems really important, but also I think I want to be a mage involved in some of the politics of the nation of Urizen. Mages are a big pillar of Urizen society. So I want to get involved in that. It could be, is there the future in the Senate potentially there? I think that'd be it. So
final question: best thing you've eaten on the Empire field during Time In?
Best thing I have eaten.
I like that question. That's a good one.
Yeah, best thing you've eaten.
Best thing. I think this is going to come with some proper quotation marks. Best thing I've eaten is certainly Bracca's beans. That was when we were in the Imperial Orcs. And also the best thing I've drunk was our Marathon Rioja, also whilst I was in the Imperial Orcs.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Speak to you later. Bye-bye. Bye. Everybody wave. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.